Hello, youth group. Welcome. Welcome back to another exciting episode of our weekly encouragement. Today is Sunday, and it's a good day. It's been nice. Our second church service happened this morning. It was pretty awesome. If you're still kind of apprehensive or you're afraid about coming and booking a spot, please don't be afraid. Just call that spot in, reserve it for next week, and get down here because I want to see everybody back in church as soon as possible and trusting God and worshiping God together. Also, a good thing that happened is we had our first official youth meeting back. We hung out at the park. We're going to do it again this week. I don't know if we're going to hang out at the park specifically. We're going to roll out some details either tomorrow or Tuesday. But it's going to be fun seeing everybody again. I want to encourage everybody to come back to youth group. It's a great time. It's a great time for it. We're not doing traditional services yet. We're just kind of hanging out and talking a little bit, and then dismissing after an hour. We're going to try to do it at the same time, 6:30 this week. If it changes back to 7, I'll let you all know by text, so keep up with that. Okay, so I've got some encouragement for you today. And less specifically encouragement and more of a challenge. Okay, so I was asked to prepare a sermon just in case there's any issues with Sunday morning and I need to step in and speak. So I prepared a sermon, and I don't like just leaving him hanging. I like putting him out there. And I thought I would just share it here. I call it Rats in the Attic. So if you're following my Instagram stories, you probably saw, on the youth Instagram, you probably saw a video of me in an attic saying I smelled like every part of a rat. I'm going to give you some context for that. The job I do is cleaning. I clean carpets, draperies, tile, fine fabrics, couches, all of that stuff. And it's my expertise. And it's pretty fun. That's what I do. But we booked a job cleaning out a 100-year-old attic that another company had kind of left half done. We said, we can do that. We kind of glanced around at the attic and didn't thoroughly check it out. And we gave a price for it. And then we suited up. We went up into that attic, and it was much more difficult than we had anticipated. I worked an 11-hour day on Thursday. It was bad for me. It was worse for my coworker because he was wearing a rubber suit and gloves and a hazmat mask and crawling around all over the place. It was kind of nightmarish, and honestly, we didn't understand the full scope of this job until we got in there, and we priced it with a much easier job in mind. We didn't really count the cost. Which makes me think about a time that Jesus approached a similar issue. In Matthew, I believe it was the 7th chapter, verses 18 through 22, Jesus is about to embark on a trip. He's got the disciples together. He's like, let's get in the boat and go. We're going to go minister. And a guy runs up before they can put out into the lake, and he's a teacher of the law. He's a professional teacher of the law, and he says, Lord, you're a great teacher. I will follow you wherever you go. Jesus turns to him and he says, foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. It doesn't say whether the guy followed him in spite of that, but I'm going to guess that he didn't. He was probably used to luxury. And that's our first point. Sometimes the cost of following Jesus that you have to count before you do it is, and I'm saying this so that you won't be surprised when it happens, he may expect us to step out of our comfort zones. Whether that's physically or metaphorically, he might expect us to leave comfort behind to follow him. For that guy, he said, hey, how do you feel about camping? Because I don't have an apartment. And the guy probably couldn't take it. Now I want us to accept that. We're preparing ourselves. We know what Christ has done for us. We know the gospel. We love him. We want to follow him. But let's understand that there's sometimes a cost involved. That sometimes there's a give and a take. And this is one of the things right here. Sometimes on the path we're following, we might have to leave comforts behind. We may have to step out of our comfort zone. We may have to go places that we're not used to. We may have to do things that we're not used to. And that's okay. Following Jesus, it's worth it. But we have to understand that's the trade-off. That's one of the costs. The second thing that happens to him before he leaves is a guy runs up and he says, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." Jesus turns to him and he says, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." Which seems pretty cold on the surface, but if you dig into what's going on here, the guy is really saying, hey, I'm taking care of my old man. I want to follow you, I really do. Maybe in a year or two after he's gone, after he passes away, then I can come out and follow you, Jesus. Jesus says, hey, either you are focused on the spiritual or you're not. Let people who aren't spiritual focus on things that aren't spiritual. Either you're called to follow me and that's your decision now, or you're not going to do it. So don't use your family as an excuse to hold back from Christ. That's the second area where we got to count the cost. Sometimes our families are going to come second to Jesus. If your family doesn't like you ministering or going to church or having a Bible, guess what? Jesus is more important than that. You have to choose Jesus. That's part of the cost. Sometimes your family, they're not going to get along well with your decision to follow Christ, depending on your family. And in those times, you have to really exercise your faith and trust God that he's going to take care of your family on that end, and that he's going to take care of you. There are many people who've actually been disowned and kicked out by their families. They've had to choose Christ over their family. And God sees that, and I know he rewards that. And he loves you, and he'll take care of you in those circumstances. So whether you have your family's approval or not, stick with Jesus. One more time where we can see this whole people not counting the cost before they rush to follow Jesus. Matthew chapter 19, the rich young man. This guy comes up to Jesus and he says, "What should I do to get eternal life?" And Jesus tells him, obey the commandments. Don't murder, don't kill anybody, don't steal, don't commit adultery, honor your father and mother. Well, I've kept all of these since I was a kid. And Jesus knew that about the guy, and he loved him for it. He knew it was the truth, and he knew he was working hard, but he knew he was missing something. So Jesus turns and he says to him, one thing you're still lacking in. Go, sell everything you have, and donate it. Give it to the poor, and you'll have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me. He told him, put your treasure in heaven instead of earth. And the young man went away sad because he had great wealth. Fun fact, St. Nicholas, or Santa Claus, was actually so deeply inspired by this story as a younger man that he did what that man couldn't, and he sold his possessions and gave to the poor. In fact, he gave the rest of his life to the poor and needy. But that's a story for another day. That's the third cost. Sometimes it's giving things up. It's giving up our addictions, our comforts, the sins that we like to cling to and hide in the dark, habits that don't glorify God. And hey, anything could be a habit that doesn't glorify God if you let it. And God may ask you, hey, you got to drop that if you're going to follow me. Why are we saying all this now? Well, I'm saying this because if you're going to be a follower of Christ, you need to prepare yourself now and understand what it costs. Otherwise, you might end up like the parable of the sower, the people who start enthusiastic, but the worries of life, all of the troubles and distractions, choke you, take the life out of you, and in the end, you're not really living an overcoming, saved life anymore. We don't want to end up like that, so we need to understand now 3 of the costs: our comfort, our family, and maybe like the rich young man, the money. But the things that we want to hold on to more than we value Christ. So here's my challenge to you right now today. I want you to examine yourselves. I want you to look at yourself and say, what is it that's more important than Jesus to me? Think about it for a minute. You got it? I do. Now talk to God tonight and say, God, take this from me. I'm going to give this over to you. Hold on to it for me. You take care of this, because it's not good in my hands. It's better in yours, and I want you to be the center of my life. I want you to take the place of whatever I was holding above you. Try it. Try that prayer out. Have a conversation with Jesus about it. And as a Christian, I think our lives are going to be a little bit more enriched if we can actively do that. Anyway, so that's my challenge for you today. And how about we end this one with some prayer requests? I have one for you. Jeremiah Curtis, one of the little boys who goes to our church, he's in pretty rough shape. He's in the hospital right now. Doctors are talking about possible multiple surgeries. I know him. He's a precious little boy. And let's pray that God protects him and carries him through and brings him to even better health than he was in before. So everybody please pray for him. We heard that this morning in church was a prayer request shared. So let's all pray for that. And if you have a prayer request for me or our YouTube community, share it down below in the comments section and tell us what you would like us to pray for. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your night. I hope God bless you. And stay cool, stay healthy, stay safe, stay frosty.